All right, I am live, everybody. Facebook, we live with one of the most powerful, intelligent, heart, I would say, community-oriented attorneys, man, that I've ever met. Man, this brother has, not only blessed us at the Community Resource Center in Somerville and North Charleston and helping in the community, man, he's everywhere. The brother is, man, he's a big help. I think we need more individuals like him in our communities. I want to talk to him about where he came from, because right now we see him as the big attorney, but he had to start somewhere. He had to start, so we want to pick his brain. We're gonna pick his brain today. We're gonna talk about where he came from. Man, we just gonna have a wonderful conversation. I already got some questions lining up. Dave, Natalie sent me some questions already. So we definitely gonna get into that. But yeah, tell us about yourself, Dave, and introduce yourself.
Yep. Well, my name is David Aylor. Obviously, I'm an attorney here in the Low Country, and originally from Spartanburg, the upstate. Went to the College of Charleston for undergrad, and then I went to law school at the University of South Carolina. Came back down here. Originally started as an and went into private practice thereafter, and been doing that quite some time. The practice has grown. Our office is important enough to have more just intelligent, bright people come along, and also I get to be friends with guys like you that help the community that I respect so much, and I come from a family of Lions Club members. For those not familiar with Lions Club, it's a service industry group, and it's just something always ingrained in me to try to give back to not just one person, one group, but just across the board the community. And so it's a really big part of our office, and it's something that I'm probably most proud of.
Okay, well, that's good. So right now, man, everybody, people look up to you, respect you. What kind of gave you that drive and motivation and hunger? Because I know it's a lot of work, man, a lot of schooling, a lot of turmoil, man. I know you get frustrated. How did you come from just being a regular school kid to building up your practice and going forward into the path that you're on now? Like, how did that look?
It was never one of those things where I had a certain objective or a certain goal. It was more just a progressive process. Growing up, obviously it had a lot to do with my family. I watched my father work at a small 2-year college up in Spartanburg. And then 2 nights or sometimes 3 nights a week, he would go teach the GED to prisoners, for extra money for family. But still then would, still be at our baseball games and our sporting events, and things like that. So I think I really saw that, that work ethic and drive through him and my mother, raising myself. I have 2 other brothers as well. They're actually both attorneys. They live on the West Coast, though, so we don't know anything about them. But, it was really just kind of one of those things, is step by step, and to really never take anything for granted, because it's easy to look back and think, oh, this was great then, or this was great, what just happened. But if you take it for granted, then it'll go away. So it always has to be a certain step-by-step process.
Okay, so what type of law do you like practicing the most? I always saw myself like as a criminal attorney back in the day, man. I just love the excitement, man. It seemed like it would be it would be fun litigating, trying to get, search warrants thrown out, and I just seem exciting to me, man. What type of law do you like to practice the most?
I started in criminal law. I still do a lot of criminal law. Actually, a lot of people don't know I'm still actually the prosecutor for the city of Anaheim. So I do that part time. Right. I work on both sides. And criminal is really where I started, and that's where I've tried the most cases. But over the years, we've really gotten into civil litigation as well. Now, civil litigation, whether it be a car wreck or some sort of slip and fall or other types of injury or sexual harassment claims, things like that, they're not as attractive, they're not as interesting as what we see on TV and movies, right? Because that's stuff most times, more often than not. But there's a lot of challenge in those too. It's just a different type of challenge. But yeah, you're right. Going head to head on the criminal side, that's where probably the most fun is, for sure.
Right. So my whole thing is, like, I see you take some real big cases, man, and I'm proud of you. I love what you do. How does it feel like going against somebody who, you might like. I don't know. Like, do attorneys actually have beef in the courtroom and then you friends outside of the court? Like, how does that work? Like, I mean, when you're really in there litigating a case, like, do you make enemies, or do you kind of say, okay, we'll let bygones be bygones outside of the courtroom? We cool. How does that work?
I think it's a little of both. What it's
Mhm.
not is like the Law and Order that you see television type shows where the lawyer rushes in, yells at the police officer or the prosecutor and grabs their client out, because you got to remember you have to have relationships with these people.
Right.
Charles is a small legal community, relatively speaking, and if you build these grudges and you build these bad relationships, these are going to be the same people that you're continuing to work with, and that you're actually probably going to need a favor from at some point. So yes, there are times that tension rises and things are said and things are done that are above and beyond maybe what should be. Absolutely, that's true of any industry. But at
Right.
the end of the day, yes, you're exactly right. Bygones can be bygones. You're here for a reason. You have a job. The person against you has a job, and you're both working for your goals. And that's true of judges too. There's certain judges that you would rather be in front of other judges, but that doesn't mean that one judge or another judge is someone that you're not willing to want to participate through the legal system. Because as you see right now with all the turmoil that's going on throughout the country, there's a lot of issues with our legal system. But what I can tell you is we have the best legal system in the entire world. Does that mean there's not a lot of mistakes? Obviously not. It definitely means there's still a lot of mistakes, just like us all as humans make a
Right.
lot of mistakes. But we have the most fair system. But yes, at the end of the day, we're all humans. Sometimes your emotions get caught up in it. But I don't look at a person, no matter what side they're on, and take that outside of the issue that we're dealing with. Because if you do that, you're going to really be caught up in a lot of grudges, a lot of angst that really isn't going to get you anywhere.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about criminal justice reform too. You being inside the system, you see a lot of things that probably need to be fixed. Some things need to be tweaked a little bit. I remember one time you and I were talking a while back um, about the dual sovereignty clause. I know that what happened to me is I was sitting in a state prison doing state time, and the federal government ended up giving me or serving me with a federal indictment based on the same information that was used to give me state time. And while sitting in, I said, "Man, that's got to be double jeopardy." I'm a real youngster, man. I'm like, "Man, how is that even possible? Like, how is the state, sentence me, and then the federal government come and pick me up for the same thing?" So, that's one thing that I see that really kind of irked me. Are there any particular things that you see that you feel like, man, I wish I could be able to change, or something in your heart that says, you know what, if I had the ability to change this, I would do it?
Well, that's one of them. That's on my top list because I've been involved
Right.
like that. And fortunately, right now we are, you know, we're in a great here in the state of South Carolina, and that's with U.S. Attorney Peter McCoy, who's just obviously recently got nominated and confirmed completely there in Washington. And Peter is comes from a criminal defense background. He also was a solicitor on the state level, and I know how strongly he feels about that. And anybody that's been in your position or
Right.
as my position as an attorney, trying to explain to someone, as I talked about, hey, I know you already got convicted of X, Y, Z, but you're getting charged with more or less the same crime in a different setting. It's unfathomable to even think that happens. I do think we're moving towards a society and a community, including under U.S. Attorney William Barr, that they're not looking to do that as often. I think in reality, a lot of times it comes down to politics. When they're trying to duly charge people and the reasons that come to it. But I can say right now, and I can only speak for this one because I can't speak for anything outside of that,
Right.
you
Right.
won't that with Peter McCoy, not here in
Right.
Carolina, not while he's at the helm.
Right. So let's continuing on the topic of prison reform. I was thinking about, or the conversation was coming up about decriminalization of marijuana. A lot of people, are, locked up for petty marijuana offenses. I know that, you do have, and we both work with Jill with was that the Compassionate Care
Right.
um, Act? Yeah. So, are you in favor for, um, medical marijuana for medicinal purposes, or the how they would say decriminalization. What's your thoughts on medical marijuana and like decriminalization as a whole?
Well, I think a lot of people have a hard understanding of, sort of the decriminalization compared to the medical. I think the
Hmm.
medical is such an excellent idea. And I really think that we see both sides, Democrats, Republicans, even
Hmm.
independents here in South Carolina, that are for medical marijuana. The problem which a lot of people maybe don't understand is when you're trying to regulate that and you're trying to put that in position, that costs a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars.
Right.
So it's not as easy as just switching, the light switch and saying, okay, now you can have marijuana if a doctor prescribes it, and all the things that come from it, from that angle. But obviously, we've seen much success and help with people throughout the United States. In the I think it's 30 something states right now have it. From the standpoint of the medical marijuana. Now, as far as the decriminalization, I don't really completely understand that. To the degree that some places it's considered not a crime at all. Other places they have things like even here in South Carolina, which confuses a lot of people and confuses my clients, is they'll get a courtesy, meaning they'll get like a speeding ticket for possession of marijuana. Well, then they'll just go pay the fine, or maybe even if they do get arrested and go to jail, they just get time served, and they say, "Well, I've never been convicted of a crime." Well, convicted of that crime. That is an actual crime that they're convicted of. So I think sometimes those lines cross depending on what state you're in and people's just general understanding of what it actually means.
Right. Okay. So, just recently, with the Ahmaud Arbery case, the issue of citizens arrest came up, and people have been really talking about it. I know Marvin Pendarvis was talking about it, and Justin Bamberg. They were talking about having to revise the law, saying that we need to really address it. Do you think that the citizens arrest law in South Carolina needs to be kind of tweaked a little, or maybe done away with as a whole? Because I've seen some people saying, well, we need to just do away with it. There's no need for it now. We have an adequate police force and things of that nature. And some other people are saying, well, hold on, don't pump the brakes too much. There still might be cases where we need it. We just need to tweak it a little. What's your understanding on that?
The biggest thing is that that's obviously historical law that's been in place throughout. And what you have to look at is whether the citizens arrest and they have the right to detain you or me or anyone else for that matter, or it's a situation where it's defense of themselves or defense of others. Meaning, if you saw an elderly woman getting mugged in the middle of the street,
Right.
I know what you do, right? Okay. Is that citizen's arrest? Not particularly, but I can guarantee you'd be holding that man down until the police got there, right?
Right. Right.
There's a little bit of confusion sometimes, and I think that the case that you specifically mentioned is a horrible example of what they wanted the law to be. Um,
Mm.
there's defense of yourself, stand your ground, which is still controversial in some places. It's something that we do have here in South Carolina, and then there's defense of others. But when you get into the citizen's arrest, it's too much of a gray area. It's that simple. There's too much of a gray area. So Representative Pendarvis, who is a close friend of mine and someone I really think is gotten on top of a lot of these different causes and will continue to. And hopefully Dion Tedder will get elected tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Exciting and can help him with that here in the state. But yeah, there's no reason to ever not look at a law and say, hey, is it working right? If it's not working right, should it be completely thrown out, or is there something that we need to tweak about it? That's what the legislature's for. And just because it's been a certain way for a certain amount of time doesn't mean it doesn't need to change.
Right. Yes, sir. Okay, so Natalie, Natalie's asking these. You want to take a question from Natalie? It's up to. All right, I'm put it on the screen. Natalie, she says, question: how does your current girlfriend feel about all the young, beautiful, intelligent women that you employ? Uh, she
You know,
set you up for that.
there's one of those things, Shakem, where a couple things you don't talk about, politics, religion,
Yeah.
and personal lives. Those are things those are things that you keep at the house, and so
Yeah.
I'll continue
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, we okay, all right. So looking at the case in Atlanta, right, man, I know that was, I mean, you've, from a lawyer perspective, I really want to see, how would you, as far as South Carolina law is concerned, it's a lot of kind of confusion, young man, he fighting with the police officer, but it looked like it was just a genuine exchange at first. Drunk. Hey, the police questioned him. He said, "Hey, man, had a couple of drinks, whatever." Fortunately, the police officer didn't let him go. They got into a tussle, and the tape was apparent. You saw the rest. In South Carolina, just because I know, I mean, George, that's a whole nother ball game. But in South Carolina, would do you think, in your expert opinion, that would be justifiable, that shooting?
I don't know enough of specific details to comment on that, but one thing that
Right.
I say that is very much in the positive, and trust me, I go up against the police and go up against SLED
Yeah.
officers and even federal agents all the time, so it's not like
Yeah.
I'm trying to toot their horn. Is that in this state, SLED would be so involved so quickly to review and analyze and look at every single thing that happened. We would see moves made a lot quicker, and the defining reasons behind why they made those moves. Meaning, yes, we arrested this person, and here's why, or no, we didn't arrest this person, here's why. I think one thing that frustrates the public, or actually, I know one thing that frustrates the public is they get, have facts. And then you and I don't even need to get started about the stuff they get off Twitter or they get off whatever. South Carolina, we do a very good job. We have great leadership within the SLED community that when there is a police involved incident, it stops right there with that police agency. There's no good old boy system. It is SLED involves and they're investigating and they're looking at it from point A to point Z of whatever occurred, and if charges need to be brought, they're going to bring it. And that's one thing that I find sort of frustrating and intriguing for looking at some different parts of the country. Breonna Taylor is one thing that comes to mind, where it's like, what is all this belaboring? I mean, just do your job, have the investigatory agency that is separate from the involved agency, and look at the case for what it is, and then determine what you want to do, and then stand behind it. There's so much of this flip flop where, I have to say that, from the South Carolina standpoint, we don't see that as much. When things are done, they're done quickly and they're done swiftly. And then they're explained whether you or I agree with it. Maybe I'm the defense attorney and I'm really not agreeing with it, right? But it is
Right.
what it is, that out there, as opposed to leaving the public in a state of frustration and anger by belaboring what actually comes out of it.
Right. So talking about Breonna Taylor, do you feel that there's a place for no knock raids, or should they be abolished? Because I know that's been a hot topic.
The whole thing is about no knock raids is there's no such thing as a no knock raid anyway, because all a raid is when there is knock, is knock knock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I've never seen even the reason that became so controversial, because in reality, again, I'm not saying that officers don't do what they're supposed to do, but to what level that has to be and what minimum level that has to be is usually what comes into question. So, how quickly that knock raid can last comparatively to the no knock, I mean, it is what it is. Again, there's safety involved with the officers or with the people in the home that may not be the person that you're looking for. So those are considerations that come in. But, I mean, there's a lot of great U.S. Marshals around here throughout the state of South Carolina that I've known for years and years. And what's their job to do is go hunt down the guy with the warrant or the girl with the warrant, right? And the ones that know what they're doing and are professional know how to do it safely, and they know how to do it professionally. Are there going to be ones that make mistakes? Of course. But in that situation, it's still unexplainable to me, at least.
Right. Do you feel that police? Okay, so let's just start from a little bit before Walter Scott. I mean, we've all been in the city for a while. You definitely had your finger on the pulse. Have you seen police community relations get better, or do you think it's gone kind of iffy or kind of up or down? How do you see it as a whole from your perspective of being in a courtroom, looking at cases and hearing things that we don't hear? How do you feel police community relations have been in the Low Country?
I think they're better. One reason is for body cams, because the thing is, coming from both sides of the fence from a criminal justice standpoint, body cams are what they are. So what you see or what I see may be two different things, right? And then everybody has two sides of the story, and then there's the truth, right? But having body cams, I think, really keeps everyone honest to the degree of, no, that's not what I said. No, I didn't approach that person aggressively. No, I didn't reach for something in my waistband, whatever the case may be. But, one person I have to give a lot of credit to is Greg Gomes and Reggie Burgess, and it's just what they've done in North Charleston, particularly. It seems like North Charleston is always in the cycle of the due to a lot of violence, and particularly young people violence. But those two men have tried everything that they can and continue to strive for the community to put themselves out there, whether it be on Facebook and you want to say rude things to them, or watch them walking down the street, trying to just do a protest, a peaceful protest for lack of violence and a change in the community. I think there's two great examples. Not that there's not other great folks around here. I just heard Chip Searson, a decade over at the city of Charleston, is going to now head over
College of Charleston.
Charleston.
Yep.
You're not going to meet a better guy than him.
No, man.
Not to leave out hundreds of other great police officers in the area, but those are types of folks that you want to look to and see what they've done and how they've really reached out. And we did it across the country as well. We're these folks where you have some protests where just violence is happening on all sides. It's not getting anybody anywhere. And then you have other ones where the chief of police or the higher up level lieutenants, commanders within the police department are walking beside the people because they believe the same message, as opposed to trying to intimidate those people.
Right. So let's talk about CPD. They recently had an audit, and the audit results kind of had instances of racial disparities in the police force. What do you think would be one of the best solutions that could be implemented? Just say, hypothetically speaking, you were running the department and you had an audit that just came out, and the police community relations are going kind of south. What do you think should be some of the strategies that will be put in place to help build that trust back with the community after an audit like that has been released?
Well, I think there's a few things, and I think some of the cities already started to do things, but really it starts at younger ages. Particularly with young African Americans, they're known to be scared. Going to arrest them, hurt them, whatever the case may be, and just more community involvement at younger ages, so that a police officer when you're in the 5th grade and you think he or she is a cool person and a nice person, not out to get you or your family members or your friends or your neighbors. Those small levels are things that I think have started but could definitely get better. And then beyond that, I think it just also comes down to with the respect level of when we're at these traffic stops. I mean, look, I'll be the first to say it, driving while black is a thing, and I've dealt with it plenty. Does that mean every officer thinks that way and acts that way? Absolutely not. But there are, unfortunately, a lot of times where that is a circumstance, and whether it actually comes to light or not, it is what it is. Or even, bite on a bicycle and they get pulled for going the wrong way. Would everybody get pulled for going the wrong way on their bicycle on that street? I mean, those are questions you have to ask yourself. But what it really boils down to is having guys, again, like Chief Burgess and other community leaders that we have that are getting out there and say, you want to talk to me, you want to tell me what you're complaining about, what you're scared about, what you're nervous about, please do that. And being more opened up. I think there's just been so much of that closure between the public, particularly the African American community, and the police. And in reality, there's a lot of great police officers and there's a lot of great African Americans. And you know what? There's also a lot of people that make mistakes on both sides. But that doesn't mean that it should always be an us against them mentality. And as you know better than anybody, unfortunately, a lot of people on both sides have either been raised in that mentality or have come to believe that. And that's what's got to change.
Right. So whenever you look at, okay, so now this fits right into the question I want to ask you. And I want to talk about your involvement in the community. Like, what really drives you to be that community person? Because I know a lot of people who are in a position like yours who are just hard to reach, you don't have access to. I mean, it's like you only see them in their ivory towers on television, on the radio. What makes you that type of guy? Like, what is it in you that gives you that, okay, I want to be somebody who we can touch, we can reach, just what separates you, or what gives you that personality type?
I think it comes back to just really the way I was raised. I was raised in a Christian home, and we were always, giving back in different ways, watching both my grandfathers and my fathers being dedicated members of the Lions Club and selling brooms door to door, which you'd get shot if you did that nowadays. But,
Yeah.
and all the different ways that we would try to help, particularly the blind and other communities, and being in this community and know that I'm not going anywhere. Short of the Lord taking me away, this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm going to be. And the community has supported me a lot and provided with me more than I could have ever imagined. And so you have to sit back and say, okay, this is what as a whole is happening to me. These are the blessings that I have. What are some little things that I can do to help other people? And, just like last week, we just gave out over 500 books of Chris Singleton's new book. If you don't know Chris Singleton, you should know. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to all our
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
You're talking about somebody that has truly walked the path that no one would ever have wanted to chosen to walk. And look what he's done, and look what he continues to do. And it's amazing people like him and you, honestly, that inspire people like me.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good thing. So now let me ask you about we've been seeing a lot of issues right now with race relations, and you got Black Lives Matter, and you got the protests going on, and the day you had the protesters and the counter protesters with the John C. Calhoun statue. I was asking Raphael James the other night, like, you've been in Charleston, man, forever. How do you think our environment turned, especially in this city? After Walter Scott, we didn't have any violent protests. After Dylan Roof, we didn't have any violent protests. Things kind of remained peaceful and intact. How do you think it snowballed from, basic peaceful protests to all of a sudden you got riots breaking out downtown, setting police cars on fire, busting out windows? How do you think we got from point A to point Z that fast? And where do you think we need to go from here in the city?
Well, I was actually downtown at a restaurant where something occurred that night on the Saturday night in question. And, you know, I wasn't scared. I'm not really that type of person.
No.
I was sad. I was sad, and I was sad for everybody involved. No matter if you were the business that just got opened back up and then got vandalized, or you were the person so angry that you felt that was the right way to act, and everybody in between. And, to watch what happened, as you and I both know, after the death of Walter Scott and after what we just had, the 5-year reunion of the Manual 9, and to see how the people came together, I don't know where the disconnect came. A lot of people like to point to social media and that it sort of revs people up and puts them into maybe a different mindset than they would usually be in. We had social media 5 years ago, of course, not to the level today that we have it, and that's across the board. But what we have seen since these incidents, and I don't know what happened tonight at the protests in Marion Square, but I understand it. I don't know if it got violent, but it got scary, and it got combative. And there's nothing wrong with you and I, or you and your next door neighbor, or me and my brother, or anyone else for that matter, having a difference of opinion. But when they turn, and no matter what group it is, to this just hateful bigotry type of language and just vile discourse, particularly what you do see over the internet, I think that's probably what leads us to what happened a couple weekends ago that didn't happen 5 years ago with Dylan Roof.
Yeah. So where do you think we're going at from here, man? Do you think, and I always like to ask this question because, like, living in the city, I think we really need to have that type of long-term perspective. Where do you think we go from here? Will situations get worse before they get better, or better before it gets worse? What's your perspective on that?
I really think that they'll get better before it gets worse, because what you see, if you saw today, a perfect example is the NASCAR race. We know what happened yesterday. We know what someone did, whoever that was. I don't think they've discovered that yet. But you watch the entire organization of NASCAR stand behind Bubba Wallace and stand behind not just him, but how much they didn't appreciate and didn't agree with and were completely against what someone was trying to single him out for, after all he was trying to do was make his organization, his sport, a better place. And it comes down to, if people continue to act that way and respond when something negative happens with a positive, like when everyone got on the Ravenel Bridge and held hands after Emmanuel 9, compared to what we just saw a couple weeks ago, even for something that occurred, that has occurred here, as we know, but something that occurred in, Minnesota. It is a little bit perplexing and scary, as you say. But I think that we're now seeing, just like in any situation, cooler heads prevailing, and now it's time to look at these ideas. What Tim Scott's trying to put together with police reform, they can call him the token, Republican Senator Biden. They can call him whatever they want, and that's people's right to have their own political beliefs of decisions he's made or statements he's made. But he's acting right now. He is making actions. And that's what it's about. It's way beyond, of course, the riots or the vandalism and even the peaceful protests. It's about what comes thereafter. And if we continue to start to build in the direction that it should be, then does that mean there's never going to be another issue? Of course not. There will always be issues, whether it be race related, gender related, religious related. I mean, you go through the history of time. There's people that are different, have various types of conflicts with other people, and that's just the way it is. Not that it makes it right, but I do think that we're heading in the direction, from across the board, to where we're seeing that these things are not going to be as bad, and as also not going to be as silenced as they were. And to some degree, Shakem, I mean, you got to think the pandemic had a lot to do with it as well, regardless of what political issue or whatever across the board. I'm not speaking to one specific thing, not just racial issues, everything from politics, everything else. Everyone in this world, more or less, has been in a state of anxiousness and suffering. And just the work that I was fortunate enough to do with you, watching those people come there, me, I mean, that's not a society that, at least here in the United States, we're used to being in. And I think that probably played into it some too.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the pandemic. So recently, man, we've been seeing like a real spike in cases. Like every time every time I like look at a Post and Courier article, it's like 1,000 cases and 1,500. I mean, it's like going up every time you turn around and look. Do you think Do you think our governor has handled it correctly as far as the opening? Do you think maybe we need to backtrack a little and say, you know what, we might have opened up too fast, let's scale it back? How do you think our local government has handled the pandemic here in the state?
I think as a whole, even through Dr. Fauci initially said that we were handling it very well, and that South Carolina was a state that, was a model state, and the process that we brought it, slowly back to. What we're seeing now, though, and most people understand this and have done enough research, is it's not that the numbers are spiking so much per se because of more interaction with people going to public places and gathering in public places. It's that there's more testing available. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where you and I couldn't have paid, $5,000 to probably get a test, because we're
Right.
not VIPs, and we don't play for any sports teams, right? So
Right.
now
Right.
it made testing so much more available. You're going to see the numbers spike. Now, correlating that along with the opening of cities and towns across America and here in the South, yeah, I'm sure that they play into each other. There's no doubt about that. But from everything that I've read, and I'm no medical expert in any form or fashion, but if there's not going to be a vaccine, herd immunity is about the only option we have, because they can't close the economy. I mean, you and
Right.
I know how many businesses, how many you yourself have hugged and put your hands on people in the last 4 or 5 months that were literally not dying but starving. and
Yeah.
and that's the rough part of it, is it's that low socioeconomic level of individuals that hurt the most, that gotta have that box of food so they can make it through that week. And if their job whether it be a restaurant or a factory or wherever it may be that they work, is still closed down per the government due to the virus. At some point, it's a really tough balance.
So Natalie asks, would you get a vaccine if they came out with one?
Would I get a vaccine if they came out with one?
Yes, sir.
That's the question I got before, but I don't know. I'd have to know more about it.
Hey, yeah, I feel you on that. So, do you think they need to like restart sports? I mean, I know. I mean, I came to your house last Super Bowl, man. We was watching the Super Bowl game. Do you think they? Do you think sports should start back up? Like, cause I miss it. Like, do you think that'd be a wise decision right now?
I think the toughest part about the sports is for not so much the professional teams, and we saw it today. I saw the numbers for Clemson University in and of itself. Is those college teams where you're on the teams for either one, simply because you're on scholarship and enjoy it, or two, you hope to have a professional career, particularly if you're playing some of the major sports, and then for those folks to be put in a difficult position of where, all right, you either play or you might miss the window for the rest of your life. Now, with the pro teams, I think it's a little bit difficult. I think everything that they're trying so hard to do within Major League Baseball and particularly the NBA as well, to make it as safe as possible. There's only so safe they're going to be able to make it, because people are still going to have, there's still going to be people that are going to be, positive. There's just no two ways about it. I would love for sports to come back. But at the same time, if you're risking your own life or risking anyone in your family for it, then that's just us being selfish.
Right. So, do you think there's ever a point to where a quarantine is going to like violate our constitutional laws? I remember, where the county was kind of going back and forth with the Isle of Palms because they were like, hey, man, we don't really want y'all coming in our jurisdiction. We got a lot of, we want to be careful of COVID-19. It seems like there's a lot of people who saying, listen, I mean, you can't legally, by constitutional law, keep me confined in my home. That's against the law. Is there ever a fine line that we have to make sure we don't cross when it comes to quarantine, constitutional law, and public safety?
Absolutely. And the examples you gave, Isle of Palms, Folly Beach, Sullivan's Island, they're using state roads. They're using state taxes. They're using federal taxes for the renourishments of their beaches. And all of a sudden they become KOI. And it just doesn't work that way. And that's what that really boiled down to. And that's where you saw Chairman Summey really go after him, saying, you can't have one hand out for us and then the other one pushing us away. It's understandable that they didn't want to have mass hordes to the beaches, and affect the people on the beach as well as, of course, the residents.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can't take that state and or that federal money and then decide you're a private island. And that was a constitutional violation.
So I saw that, the governor, he actually chose to kind of stay out of that. Really, I guess he wanted the local municipalities to kind of really figure that out, which is a good thing, because I'm not a guy that's for big government, right? I'm really not. I like, I believe there needs to be checks and balances. I don't believe in too much of big government. But do you think that, there ever is a time to where the governor would need to say, okay, I have to step in and settle these situations? Because a lot of Republicans, and I'm a conservative, but a lot of Republicans were, saying like, listen, McMaster, you got to step in. Like, I mean, yeah, I understand we, want to maintain, each jurisdiction's sovereignty, but the governor has to step in. Do you think that, there is a time in these issues where the governor is going to have to weigh in and kind of resolve the issue?
I think so, because I think it'll be to the point where they'll have to turn to him or whatever administration it is in place, simply because you're talking about state constitutional laws. We all think about the U.S. Constitution. Well, we have one for the state too. So, those laws also have to be followed. Not that all of them are all the time, or even paid attention to enough. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's circumstances where the governor does have to step in. And right now we're hearing a lot of concerns and complaints, even, and critical comments about why is the governor not coming out and speaking more in regards to the spiking in the numbers. And for whatever reason, the South seems to be spiking more than anyone else. Well, I think it's pretty easy to figure out why. If we're opening up sooner and we got beautiful places like Charleston, who do you think's jumping in the car from up north and coming down? I mean, you see there's two sides of that. They're not asking people to quarantine in Florida or South Carolina any longer. So you have people coming to that beach house that your aunt rented last summer, and she's going to come back this summer. And maybe she's carrying it or somebody with her is carrying it. So, I mean, I think there's other things at play that people aren't thinking about beyond just the local citizen of that city and that state.
Right. Okay. So everybody is now talking about how lawyers are getting into action politically here locally. You got, Dion Tedder, man, who I support 1,000%, who Lewis Smith supports 1,000%. We support Dion Tedder. You got, Pendarvis and Kimson.
Leon.
The question is,
Yep.
huh? We say?
Got Leon Stavernakis.
Leon Stavernakis. Okay, the big question is, when are you going to run?
As of right now, I'm enjoying my life as a private citizen, hanging out with guys like you and getting involved in the community and watching all my friends go do the real work up there.
Hey, well, man. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could take some people out. I ain't gonna lie, man. If you put I think, man, you could take a lot of people out right now, man. I think you be
take out, but I won't say that on here. So
yeah, man. Hey, if you put your name in the hat, that'd be real scary for a lot of opposition. That'd be really scary. I think that'd be really scary. But yeah, so you want to take another question from Natalie?
Or might as well close it up with one more Natalie question.
All right, one more Natalie. Okay, Natalie says, how do you feel about the Hells Angels and Bikers for Trump riding to Minneapolis and Seattle to fight Antifa? Thought I'd throw you a biker question. Riders Law Group.
I was not aware of that. But I have never, and I didn't, and I got to be honest, maybe a little bit ignorant here, Shakem. I didn't know what Antifa was until this last cycle of news. I sort of understood what their purpose was once I did some more research. But, I was not aware of specifically anything regarding whether it be Hells Angels or other motorcycle clubs, going up against them. But you can see that whether it be a motorcycle club or anyone else, people are going to feel pretty strongly about some of the damage that they did and some of the really just awful, pointless things they did, which took away from, think about that.
Right.
Dion Tedder, a lot of my staff was there. I was with my family that day. You had such a peaceful protest that got marred by the actions of so few. And from everything I've heard and understood, at least people that consider them part of Antifa were very much a part of that and have been throughout the United States. So, you know what? If the Hells Angels want to protect them or protect against them, I don't really have a problem with it.
Right. So we're going to wrap this up in a few. I want to ask you a question about your future as an attorney. Like, man, we know it's a bright future. I really love what you do. I love how you go on the radio. You give good information. Like I said, I love how, you're down to earth and you're real. Like, where do you see, I know your law practice, you want to grow it. Where do you see Aylor Law, what do you call it? Aylor Law Firm, right? The law offices of David Aylor. Where do you see that in 5-10 years? Where do you see your practice at in 5 or 10 years?
We're hoping to grow. We're adding some different types of practice, adding some more people. Obviously, the pandemic, just like for every other business, kind of put the brakes on a few things. But we're developing. We have a building we're building over the Tanger outlets that's coming in the near future, and look forward to moving into that. And we're in Myrtle Beach a lot more heavily than we were. And we'll go from there. It's one step at a time, but just like any other business, it's one step forward and 2 steps back. And the pandemic, maybe 3 steps back, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I want to continue to grow. I'm not going anywhere. I want to continue like you. and Lewis and this community, and do what we can to do everything we can to help, and not forget the folks that they're always going to need our help. For whether it be bad situations that they chose to be in themselves or bad situations that they unfortunately had no choice to be in. It's people like you in this community that remind me of that and remind me of what all we have to do as responsible adults that are in fortunate positions to try to help and influence other people to help with us.
Right, man. That's what's up, Dave. Man, I greatly appreciate it, man. You, like I said, man, you like a very good inspiration to a lot of us. I appreciate everything that you do. Your insightfulness. I think this was a wonderful interview. You kind of really gave us. Matter of fact, one more thing, one more thing, right? Because like, would have been like anybody who wants to go into the field of law, right? Because you've built your success, a young person, youngster in law school, maybe struggling, racking up student loan, kind of really not knowing where they are. I know you've been there before, like maybe like
Absolutely.
saying, man, is this really what I want to do? Or kind of like, struggling. What kind of advice do you have for somebody who's young, wanting to, get to that level to where they're independent? What type of game do you have to give them for somebody in law school just struggling to get by?
Be ready to work for free. And
Mm.
you're not ultimately working for free. You may not be working for money, but you're not working for free because you're working for experience. And that experience is going to help you figure out what type of law you want to do, if that's the way you go, and also what type of lawyer you want to be. The type of people that you're looking for as far as who you want to emulate, who you want to, I've had so many successful lawyers that helped me from day one, and getting connected to them was not always the easiest way, sort of like
Right.
trying talk to a pretty girl at the bar, right?
Yeah.
You got a yes or no, and a lot of times it's going to be no more than a yes. But getting with lawyers and getting mentors and having people that have been through that experience and gone through life, and really just helping. And then beyond that, also just uh, be ready to strike out. Be ready to not get that case. Be ready to not get that job, and don't think it's because of you. It's because of that circumstance, because there's going to be another one that's going to come along. I think a lot of times, Shakem, and I've talked about it, considering your own past and what you're open and shared about, is like we all get down. Remember, like you said, you waiting for that bus stop where you're seeing those guys drive by in the nice cars, and you said, man, this
Yep.
doesn't feel right. but
Yep.
but you had to, you had to pick up and keep moving and continue to become what you are now, and that's a community leader. And I think sometimes it's difficult for all of us, no matter what field we're in. Law is just one example of where we feel like, hey, I guess maybe this isn't right for me, or I'm not a good fit for this. No, maybe that one situation wasn't, but I can promise you, if you keep going, you're going to find one that is.
Right. What fraternity were you a member of? Natalie put that up. What fraternity were you a member of?
I'm not a Greek activist with that.
and hey man, Dave, we appreciate that, man. I think that was some good advice, really good advice. I mean, I that's something that I even actually would give somebody, for somebody who wants to get in, activism, or run a nonprofit organization, or even run a business. A lot of times you work for free. You got to make sure you get yourself out. People know who you are.
Walls. You're gonna run into a lot of walls, but they're just gonna keep going. Yeah. But sometimes, sometimes what I think people, and particularly young people, because they haven't experienced a lot, is when you think you're working for free, you're not. You're actually working
Mm,
because you're receiving the benefit of that labor, when you're seeing the faces that you're helping and the people that you're helping, or the organization that you're lending your hand to raise money for, or whatever the case may be. I've been on too many bad, date things. They never even paid for me that much, but it was still going to a good charity. So
right, right. Word. Okay. Hey, I appreciate it, Dave, man. I got so many questions in the comment. I couldn't really get to all of them, but
no,
somebody.
you and your co-host Natalie, we can do it again next time with y'all whenever you want.
Most definite. Somebody asked about John McCullum. I don't know if you know him. He talked about the media, having a lot of influence on, what's going on now and the direction that the country is going in. I know you probably agree with that media influence. Um, he said, doing the stirring up a lot of things, a lot of confusion. Like I said, I had Raphael James on, yesterday. That's why, the day before, the media, we want to kind of really get a good understanding of, how the media plays a role in a lot of this. But man, I appreciate you 1,000%, Dave. Man, I love you. Keep doing what you do. Man, we had a lot of viewers come in to listen to you, man, and I appreciate that. Any last words? Anything you want to? Hey, Natalie's a trip. This is my last. How do you put up with Natalie all the time, man? That's got to be a job. That's got to be a job in and of itself, right there.
Just get used to her. You tell your co-host I said I appreciate her assistance with our interview, and I appreciate you having me, and I'd be glad to come back on anytime. And
yes, sir.
More importantly than anything, I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate what you do in this community.
Yes, sir. Salute you, brother. You take care, man. Thanks for coming on, D.
All right, love.
All right, take care.